The American Revolutionary War, which lasted from 1775 to 1783, was a conflict between the 13 British colonies in North America and Great Britain. It was fought over several issues, including what was thought to be unfair taxation, lack of representation in the British government, the colonists' desire for greater autonomy, and for some, ultimately self-rule. The end result of the war was the recognition of the United States as an independent nation and the end of British colonial rule of these 13 colonies. The 13 British colonies in North America had been founded in the 17th and 18th centuries as extensions of the British Empire. The colonies were subject to British rule, but they had their own local governments and elected representatives who were responsible for managing day-to-day affairs. However, tensions began to rise in the mid-18th century as the British government sought to exert greater control over the colonies and to impose new taxes and regulations on them. One of the key sources of conflict was the Stamp Act of 1765, which required the colonists to pay a tax on all printed materials, including newspapers, legal documents, and even decks of cards. The colonists saw this as an attempt to infringe on their rights as British subjects, and they protested the measure vigorously. This led to a wider movement for colonial rights and autonomy, with slogans like "No taxation without representation" becoming popular rallying cries. The conflict deepened in 1770 with the Boston Massacre, in which British troops fired on a crowd of colonists, killing 5 people. This incident further inflamed tensions and helped to spark a growing movement for independence. The conflict escalated in 1775, when British troops clashed with colonial militia forces at Lexington and Concord. This marked the beginning of the American Revolutionary War, as the colonists organized an army and began to resist British rule by force. Over the next several years, the two sides fought a series of battles and skirmishes, with neither side gaining a decisive advantage. In 1776, the so-called Continental Congress, which represented the 13 colonies, declared independence from Great Britain. The Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, laid out the case for why the colonies should be free and independent states, and it enumerated a long list of grievances against the British government. The declaration was adopted on July 4, 1776, and it remains one of the most important documents in American history. The war continued for several more years, with both sides winning significant victories and suffering major losses. The British had the advantage of a well-trained army and a powerful navy, but the colonists were fighting on their own terrain and had the advantage of knowing the local geography and terrain. Some of the key battles of the war included the Battle of Saratoga in 1777, which was a major victory for the colonists and helped to turn the tide of the war in their favor. Another significant battle was the Battle of Yorktown in 1781, which was the last major battle of the war. The colonists, with the help of French forces, were able to defeat the British army and force them to surrender. The war officially ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which recognized the independence of the United States and established the boundaries of the new nation. The treaty also granted fishing rights to the United States in Canadian waters and recognized the debts owed by the United States to British creditors. The American Revolutionary War was a significant event in world history, as it marked the first time that a colony had successfully rebelled against a major colonial power and established its own independent nation. The war helped to inspire other revolutionary movements around the world, and it served as a model for future struggles for independence and self-rule. The war also had significant implications for the United States, as it established the country as a major world power during the 1800s, especially in the Western Hemisphere.